So first of all, thank you, Lisa, for inviting me here, and thanks, Steve, for talking to Lisa. So I got invited here. My name is Martin Stenfors. I work for a company called Renewcell. We have a tagline saying, "We make fashion sustainable," and that is what we are hoping to do. We're still, and I will elaborate a little bit on this earlier, we're still in a startup phase. So we haven't made fashion sustainable yet, but we are trying to do as much as we can from our end. So we've heard numerous people today talking about fashion industry being a big sustainability, or having big sustainability issues. So one key statistic that sort of has stuck in my mind is that one garbage truck of textiles is burned or landfilled every second on the globe, year round. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a lot of textile fibers getting lost in the process into landfills or burned. Another a bit scary statistic is that in 2050, with the sort of current projections, the fashion industry or textile industry would consume more than a quarter of the global carbon dioxide budget, which obviously is crazy, and if we would end up there, then we would have major problems on our globe as it is today. Water scarcity also. This is, or it used to be, in 1989, this was the 4th largest lake in the world, Aral Lake, between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. And these are cotton growing areas, and a lot of the water from the Aral Lake was used for irrigation of cotton and other crops. And now, as you see on the left-hand side from 2014, it's 10% of what it used to be. And the right-hand part is now officially a desert rather than a lake. So how does that fit into Renewcell? And I will also show a small film, but it's just one, so bear with me.
There is fashion everywhere, on everybody, and in almost every store. But producing all these clothes means more carbon emissions, more chemicals, more waste, and more water use. It's not sustainable. But there is a way to put fashion first without putting the environment second, because we know how to recycle cotton so it can be turned into new fibers, yarn, fabrics, and garments that can be produced and worn with a clear conscience, and then recycled again and again. So give us your used jeans or any used garments. We upcycle them into a new biodegradable raw material called Renewcell pulp, which has the same or higher quality than virgin pulp and can be fed into the textile production cycle. Recycling clothes finally works.
Thanks. So that's the very short version of my presentation, but I'll go into a bit more detail about what we actually do. So before I talk a little about Renewcell, I wanted to talk about why we think that it's important to move trying to get this to work. Move from this linear economy that textile industry is today and that Steve talked about into a more circular economy. So this is a very complicated picture with a lot of figures on it. We won't talk about everything. But today, 53 million tons of fiber are produced and used in the clothing industry, apparel industry today. 97 of that fiber is virgin fibers. Both plastic fibers, oil-based fibers into synthetic fibers, cotton and other fibers. 12% is lost in production. You get production trimmings, you get different waste through the textile production process. 500,000 tons is leaked into the oceans as microplastics. As you all know, it's a big big problem and a big topic because those fibers will not biodegrade in the next couple of thousand years. So 73% of all the fibers that we put into the textile value chain will be landfill or incinerated. And that is after the use phase. First use, second-hand use, and all sort of the loops that the garment actually has before it's discarded. So what we want to do is to work on this very, very tiny, almost not visible, less than 1% closed loop recycling, that textile fibers that go back into being new textile fibers and can be used to manufacture new garments. So this is mainly today mechanical recycling of cotton or recycling of wool that is happening in this 1% slot. And our sort of place in the waste hierarchy is, as long as a garment can be used, remade in Steve's Indian plant into bags or other applications, resold in any way, then it's too early for the clothes to come to us. Once they cannot be sold or used as garments anymore or have any sort of reuse function as garments in the textile value chain, then we can recycle them into a raw material that can be used to produce new fibers. And any kind of recycling is much better than the other options, energy recovery. Energy recovery is a much better option than landfill, but this is where we are in the waste hierarchy. We don't want to take perfectly good clothes and shred them into pieces and make our dissolving pulp of it. Sooner or later they will be worn out, and then is when we should take care of them. So we have the acronym. So the company was founded in 2012 by 3 professors from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm that are focusing on cellulosic chemistry, so very deep into the making of paper and making of pulp or making of those kind of cellulosic products from wood resources. They met an entrepreneur who had some money, and together they founded the company in 2012. So the first couple of years they spent in the lab trying to understand how can we make a process to produce dissolving pulp, but without using forest resource, but using textile waste as the resource into the process instead. So they did the research, they filed for patents, they did some lab testing, produced pulp in the lab, fibers in the lab, produced a couple of garments. One you saw out there, the yellow dress is here. Look at this number, it's here. But then around 2016, they decided that they had spent enough time in the lab researching and developing this process, and they were ready to go into scale up of this technology. So during 2017 and a bit into 2018, the plant was built. It's in Sweden, and it has an annual capacity of 7,000 tons of dissolving pulp per year. And during this time also H&M entered as a minority shareholder in the company. They do that. They invest in emerging sustainable technologies to show support to technologies that they hope will sort of become viable and become commercially available. They will never sort of own the whole company because it's not in their policy to own their value chain, but they do these kind of strategic investments to support technology development. So during 2018, slightly before summer and after summer last year, the production started. So we have been trying out different types of raw material in the plant. We have been trying to tweak the processes and get them up and running. And during first quarter of this year, we made the first commercial sales. It's a container of 22 tons of dissolving pulp on its way to a fiber manufacturer. It will hopefully arrive within a week, and hopefully then they will produce sort of the first commercial grade fiber made from our recycled pulp. All the production previously have been lab tests or more small-scale tests. So it will be it's a very interesting couple of weeks for us coming ahead. But if we look at what we do, so since the whole foundation for our company is to be a sustainable company and make fashion sustainable, obviously our process and the way we run our company has to be sustainable as well. So for instance, when it comes to chemical use, we do use chemicals. It's a chemical recycling process. We use sort of the most environmentally friendly chemicals that we have been able to find, and we reuse all the chemicals until they are sort of reacted away in the process, and the emissions is harmless to the environment. We only use renewable energy in the plant, and as I said, 7,000 tons of pulp can be produced. It's a tricky sort of number to put in relation, but it could produce 30 million t-shirts if you would use them to produce just t-shirts like the one outside. So it's it can still produce lots of garments, but it's a drop in the sea when you look at the sort of global market for dissolving pulp and for this type of products. So what we do is that we take textile waste, could be post-consumer waste, could be pre-consumer waste, meaning overstocks at retailers or unsold garments or damaged garments that have been damaged during transportation from manufacturing site to the country where it's supposed to be sold. And also production waste from textile manufacturing. So those are the three sources we can use. So first of all, it's a mechanical process, as you saw in the video as well, to shred it into small pieces. We dissolve it into chemicals. We de-dye it to get rid of the color. We bleach it, and we do this in an environmentally friendly process, but to be as close to the current product that is available on the market, so that our customers, the fiber manufacturers, they recognize what they get. It's the same look and feel and has the same properties as the product made from wood resources have today. We separate any synthetic fibers that are in the mix. Currently, we can run the plant at 2% synthetic fibers. It could be polyester or elastan or other types of fibers, which we don't want in our final product. So here the product is in a wet slurry with sort of 99% water and 1% fiber. So the last half of the factory is sort of just getting the water out of the product, pressing, heating, drying, cutting up to sheets so we can have a sheet format to distribute the product to the fiber manufacturers. I'm not sure if you see anything, but there's a couple of snapshots from the factory. So here we have Steven's old jeans from Bank & Vogue that are going in to be shredded. I thought they were all yours. So this is the first part of the process. And as you saw on the film also, it's a process industry. If you've ever been to a pulp and paper mill or any other sort of process industry, you don't see much. It's sort of pipes and tanks, and the whole process after this shredding step until it's sheets is sort of just closed loop within pipes and tanks and pumps and stuff like that. Here you see the bales of sort of finished product that are packed up and shipped to our customers. So the logistics setup, I work in logistics, so this is one of my favorite topics. Is that we can, as I said, we can take waste from quite early on in the cotton fiber producing industry. So it could be cotton processing waste, it could be waste from yarn spinning, it could be waste yarn, waste fabric, unsold garments, or post-consumer garments. And post-consumer garments are the ones that when we talk to the fashion industry that are really excited about this and want to have more sustainable fibers available to produce garments, fast fashion companies, they don't want to solve the problem with fast fashion by reducing sales. they want to solve the problem by having sustainable fibers, obviously, because they still want to be in business. So we take all this waste, we do our process, produce the dissolving pulp, which is then sent to the fiber manufacturers. So this is a very consolidated market with maybe 6 of the biggest fiber manufacturers stand for like 85% of the global capacity for fiber manufacturing. And the types of fiber that can be produced from dissolving pulp and has been for 100 years is rayon, as it's called here in the US, viscose in Europe, lyocell, modal, cupro. There are a number of like 5 different fiber types that you can produce from this dissolving pulp. And once it's turned into yarn again, then we can collect it again. And in lab environment, we have tried to sort of recycle our own fibers 6 or 7 times before the research team said, well, this is enough. We have proven that it's a circular material that can be recycled time and time again. And we are not dependent on sort of fiber length as you are in the mechanical recycling. And this is due to the fact that when our products come to the fiber manufacturing sites, it's dissolved into chemicals and produced in a liquid to produce this man-made cellulosic fibers. So fiber length is not important because it doesn't mean anything in the next step of the process. So our product, the pulp sheets that you saw in the film and pictures, and also out in the foyer, it's a circular product. We take textile waste and we turn it into a raw material that can be used as feedstock to new textile fibers. It's biodegradable since it's pure cellulosics. If you would toss the t-shirt out there into the forest, it will be biodegrading in not too long time compared to synthetic fibers. This is perhaps one of the most important things, the quality. One of the problems with the recycling that is going on today with mechanical recycling, as Steve said, maybe 15% blend. You can use recycled fiber if you want to get a yarn that has the same quality as virgin yarn. But same here, since our pulp is processed further on in the fiber manufacturers' facilities, the test that we have been doing shows that the quality is at par, or in some instances even better than the one you get when you make the fiber from wood pulp. And this is also something that the fashion industry is really excited about, because then they can use this fiber in all their normal applications with all sort of the same usage as you would have for virgin fibers today. Scalable, we already built the first demonstration plant of 7,000 tons capacity. So we're proven that it's possible to do this in a larger scale. But we're also looking to add more production capacity. I mean, unfortunately, this is not an app. You just can't sort of roll it out to a new country. You actually have to invest in the stainless steels and pipes and tanks and machinery that is required to produce this. So, but we're looking to increase capacity as soon as possible. Something about the macro trends as we see them. In the last 15 years, sales of apparel has doubled. At the same time, the average utilization of every garment is going down. And I mean, this is the fast fashion sort of impact that you see here. But also the fact that more and more people are entering the global middle class. And one of the first things that you would buy a lot more of when you have the means to do that, after sort of buying a refrigerator and getting more food, is apparel and fashion. So this trend is most likely going to increase. So the global fiber volume, or the global apparel volume, will most likely continue to increase as more and more people enter into the global middle class. So in total today, the fiber market is around 100 million tons per year. 67 million tons 65% is synthetic fiber. So you take oil and you make polyester or spandex or elastan or nylon or any other synthetic fibers. And this is the one that is expected to grow most in tonnage as well if we look to 2030, so 10, 11 years ahead in time. This blue line is cotton. As you see, it's quite flat, and that's because there is not much more land to grow cotton, and with the cotton sort of environmental problems with sort of water scarcity and being very water intensive and insecticides and pesticide intensive crop, the projections is that cotton will stay pretty flat, meaning that we will lose market share in the coming years. This pink one is the man-made cellulosic fibers. So today the market is around 7 million tons, but it's expected to almost double in the coming 10 years, up to 13 million tons. And this is because of most of the growth will be covered by synthetic fibers. Cotton cannot grow, so there will be a gap in what fiber types are available to fill the gap to be able to meet the demand in the future. And the forecast at least is that man-made cellulosic fibers will have the largest growth moving forward. So, are we doomed then? Everything sort of goes up, the fiber quantities are increasing. But this is an interesting trend on what's happening on the customer side. So this is a comparison about how many consumers are Googling cheap fashion compared to sustainable fashion. And as you see, there has actually been a shift in the actual searches for sustainable fashion that has gone up considerably in the last couple of years, same time as cheap fashion has had a decline. If that will translate into people buying more sustainable clothes and not buying fast fashion, that's yet to be seen. But at least it is it's a trend in the consumer community to be more sustainable aware, and to have a more interest in sustainable textiles. And from the fashion industry's point of view, there is a very large interest and a very sort of bold statements being made when it comes to sustainability. So we're just taking a couple of examples here. So H&M says that we will use 100% recycled or other sustainably sourced materials by 2030. So if that happens, it will be a huge increase in demand for sustainable fibers and specifically for recycled fibers. Levi's are saying, our vision is to recycle your old Levi's into new ones. Adidas are talking about closed loop solution. Kering Group are talking about sustainability to drive future growth. Stella McCartney is talking about zero industrial waste and talk about making products from recycled cellulose. Inditex talking about zero waste to landfill and using more sustainable fibers. So some of the fast fashion companies, or many of the sort of serious fast fashion companies, are at least on a target and sort of on a goal point of view, are quite ambitious when it comes to the sustainable agenda that they want to achieve. Remains to be proven that they will actually reach it, but as someone said, I can't remember who, if you reach for the stars, you might land on the moon. So it's a good step in the right direction from all the major retailers that we are talking to, at least. So if we look at our sourcing, so as I said, we have three major categories that we use in our plant today. So it's production-based, these are the green ones. So we used waste from yarn manufacturing, fabric manufacturing, and garment manufacturing. These are easier to control because the ones manufacturing the yarn, they know what they put in the yarn. they know how they have dyed it, they know what composition the yarn has. But at the same time, the most interest from the fashion industry is around post-consumer waste, used garments. So we will most likely have a balance of both those types of raw material when we scale up our production. As I said also, there is a big topic that's not talked about too much with the pre-consumer waste. I mean, waste, unsold goods, stuff you can't sell. And that a couple of companies, H&M in Sweden and Burberry in UK, have gotten some heat about when it was discovered that they incinerated perfectly good clothes instead of doing something good with them. So for this category, the fashion industry is also very interested to find solutions that will sort of keep them out of the press and to use those fibers in a better way when the case is that they don't want to put it to the second-hand market, which is something that they usually don't want to do. So then we can recycle those fibers into new fibers. So the feedstock ecosystem, pretty much, we have a lot of textile producers, a lot of denim producers over on this end. That is part of this ecosystem. We have sorters and collectors on this side. Obviously, since we're in Europe, we work with some of the European ones. But our major supplier so far has been Bank & Vogue with, I think it's 75 tons by now, Steve, that we haven't used up everything, but we will use those to produce our product. And also directly with the brands when it comes to the pre-consumer waste or unsold goods that is in the industry. So when it comes to sourcing, you can't see what's in here. It's not supposed to see either. But I mean, from our point of view, we work out of Sweden. They have very, very strict environmental regulations, which is good, because then our process has to be very environmentally friendly as well. But there are a number of, for instance, chemicals that are banned in the European Union, but are allowed in textile production in other regions or with garments intended for other regions. So we have to have a pretty strict raw material specification on what chemicals can be in the textile waste that we take into Sweden. Otherwise, we will be breaking the law, which we don't want to do. So there is a long sort of list of restricted substances that you can't have in garments that you sell in Europe, and that is the same list that we use when we source raw material. Right now, we are working with 98% cotton content. The factory is designed to take full garments, full jeans, for instances, to separate out the rivets and buttons and zippers and all the synthetic material. We don't use that yet, but we plan to start trials with full garments probably fourth quarter of this year. There also is a limitation or restriction when it comes to dye stuff. We like denim because indigo is a fairly easy dye to decolor and to bleach in our process. Our bleaching processes, there are more effective bleaching processes, but they would be sort of more environmentally unfriendly as well. So we are using the most environmentally friendly process that there is today. But that also creates some problems with de-dyeing some dark reactive dyes or some dyes that are really, really stuck to the fiber. And this is also something we do for all new feedstocks. So I think we have been tried out in our lab like 250 different types of feedstock to make sure that it will work in our plant, because I mean it doesn't make sense for us to source something and then we find out that we can't use it in the plant because of some property. So we test for cotton content, we test for something called viscosity, which is a chemical parameter of the fabric we get. We test for bleaching, is it bleachable in our process? We test for what do we call it? if it's possible to shred in the shredders that we have in our plant. Some very elastic fabrics creates problem. Woven ones are usually fine, but just to make sure that we have the feedstock that we actually buy is something that we also can use in the plant. So that was everything that I had intended to cover. So hopefully we can increase our capacity, and to increase that sort of fraction of 1% that actually is closed loop recycled textile, and try to increase that over time to make the fashion industry more sustainable. Thank you.
So now there will be time for the last questions. If there is any. Maybe everybody have been talking with Martin outside. There's one question here.
I'm wondering how the clothes gets to your facility, like where you're getting the clothing from.
Good question. So when it comes to the production waste, textile production waste, obviously we get that from textile producing countries. So sort of on a top five list would be Turkey, it would be Pakistan, it would be India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka so far. When it comes to post-consumer, we have had some small shipments from Europe, but most of it is from Steve in North America. Sorry? Yes.
I have a question as well.
Yes.
So do you have to bleach all the fibers, or can you press sheets of just say red and blue, and that way it's not pre-dyed at the new production?
So we are actually, in this first container that we have sent white sheets, and we have sent some light bluish sheets as well to see what happens, because it's not, since our product goes into chemical process, it's not entirely obvious what will happen with the dye stuff that is still in there. I mean, they have designed their plants to run on dissolving pulp made from wood, and that is bleached to a certain degree of brightness, so that is what they're used to having. So if we put light bluish or red pulp sheets in their process, we really don't know what will happen. But we will try it in the coming weeks as well. I mean, it would be perfect if we could recycle the dye stuff as well to create blue fibers to go, or to red fibers from the start.